Sekeres and Price for Wednesday, November 6, 2024. We're coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the historic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. And if you're heading to a game downtown, make a staycation out of it. Book the Sekeres and Price rate here at the Wall Center. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for our rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. We got a big show planned for you. It's Take Your Kid to Work Day, so we got a couple of ninth graders here from Handsworth watching the proceedings, which means we better be on our P's and Q's, and we better watch our language, Blake Price.
For those of you that don't like the swearing on the air,
you've picked a good day.
You picked a good day, because we're not going to put up with that shit today. I mean, stuff.
Incredible. In front of his own children.
Yeah, because they don't hear that at home.
Well, you walked in today with your normal potty mouth. And I said, wait a second, the kids are here. Should we not be watching our language?
Angels. They don't hear it. They don't hear it.
Surrey Mitsubishi poll question today. Will Quinn Hughes be the best player in Canucks history? Yes or no? You can vote at the Sekeres and Price X and YouTube channels. I know there are some of you who would say he is already. He is right now. We considered putting that down as an option.
Some have written that in already.
I see that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, folks. And I love Quinn Hughes as much as the next guy. But if it were to all end with a devastating injury tomorrow in LA, he's 345 points in 376 games. He becomes one of the biggest what ifs in Canucks lore.
It's just,
he's barely a third of the way to the point totals of Henrik and Daniel Sedin, and I don't anticipate he will be a 1,000-point defenseman, at least with the Vancouver, but it's possible.
Now, you again, if the wording is different, and it very clearly says the most skilled player in Canucks history, well, then you could say yes.
Well,
that's a snapshot.
Then Pavel Bure has an argument.
It'd be Pavel versus Quinn.
Oh, I think I'd go Pavel there. In terms of tools, I think I would still go Pavel. I think Pavel is still the most talented player to slip on the Canucks sweater.
It's just different positions, so they're tough to compare.
For sure. Quinn is right there. There's very little left wanting in his game.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more power from Bure, right? Like, he wasn't the biggest guy, but he packed a punch.
Well, yeah.
Anyways, I voted yes on the poll, and I voted yes because he's already got a Norris Trophy. There are very few Canucks with league hardware over their 54-year history. There are very few of them with multiple league trophies. And I think Quinn Hughes is going to have multiple league trophies when it's all said and done. I think he's consistently going to move his way up the scoring list. He sits 22nd right now. When it's all said and done this year with another Quinn Hughes-esque season, he's going to be top 15, maybe even top 10 on all-time Canucks scoring, and he's already the best defenseman in club history. So everything here is tracking towards a yes for me, and I voted accordingly.
Roadster is trolling, putting Mark Messier into the YouTube chat. But hey,
Mark Messier had the best career of anybody who has worn a Vancouver Canucks jersey. There is a difference.
So again, semantics matters here. I will say yes as well.
Yeah.
Because I think he's going to have the most individual trophies in Canucks history.
That's it. Most people are voting yes here. And I can understand it. Number one, when you look at the here and now. Number two, when you do the projections. And, of course, number three, when you see a performance like last night. And I know it's against one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League. But when you're just so high and above the rest of the competition, it's that noticeable. You could sit someone down in front of the game last night from some of the deepest, darkest recesses across this planet, having never seen a hockey game, sat them down and said, "Watch it. What stands out to you?" They would have said, "Well, who's that little guy with the Vancouver Canucks? What's getting circles around everyone?"
What's the podium order for you right now? What is Hughes trying to pass on the podium for you? Order the podium. Best Canucks of all time.
Well, I have a hard time going anywhere but Henrik and Daniel Sedin in that order.
And then Bure, number 3.
Yeah.
And Luongo 4th? Does seem about right?
Naslund and Luongo is an interesting debate. Two different positions, needless to say.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we underrate just how great Naslund was because, number one, he played with a couple of very good line mates, and so we sometimes lump him in with Bertuzzi and Morrison.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, he played here in the shadow of Trevor. You remember Trevor Linden was a Canuck for a large swath of his career and sort of the go-to guy in the room for the media, a very visible Vancouver Canuck, most beloved Vancouver Canuck, I think you can say, Trevor Linden. He's got league hardware, Naslund does. He's third all-time in scoring. So I haven't actually done the exercise, but for me, it's the Twins. I mean, Blake... Again, I wouldn't put Hughes there right now, but in very short order, I think he's going to be on my podium.
You know who's going to be a sneaky top 5 guy in a few years' time?
JT Miller?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
JT Miller this season passes Pavel Bure. With a healthy season, this season, JT Miller passes Pavel Bure in points.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of crazy to think.
No, it is. Well, and take a look at the guys like Quinn Hughes can pass like 10 to 12 guys this year alone that were pretty darn good players.
Yeah.
For the Vancouver Canucks.
Quinn Hughes will be a top 15 all-time scorer this season for the Vancouver Canucks.
Yes. So when we look at these trophy winners from the Canucks, of course, Hank and Danny each have an Art Ross trophy. Bure and Pettersson have the Calder trophy. Kessler has the Selke. Hank has the only Hart in team history. Hughes is the only Norris in team history. I know, and then Daniel Sedin and Marcus Naslund both have the Ted Lindsay Award, once upon a time the Lester B. Pearson Award, which is the league MVP, as voted on by the players who, I've heard this before, that one should maybe have more credence, more weight, given that it's coming from your peers.
To the people we go again. Dan, could Hughes lose the Norris this year but win the Hart? Is there a narrow path there?
I wouldn't put anything past NHL voters because sometimes voters like to spread the love around. But yeah, it stands to reason if you're the Hart Trophy winner, you should automatically win the Norris, like logically.
But here's the thing. If Cale Makar has a 120-point season, but his defensive metrics are unabashedly terrible, a la Erik Karlsson a couple of years ago. But Quinn Hughes has 98 points, 101 points. Maybe not even that. Maybe he's got 90 points. But the Canucks win the division, and his defensive metrics are spectacular. I think there's a path to it. I think there is. It's a narrow one.
Frankly, I thought his Hart Trophy candidacy last year was a little underplayed.
Yeah, I agree.
But that is a most difficult award to win in a McDavid McKinnon world right now.
Yep, for sure.
We had this conversation a couple weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of how few seasons there are going to be where Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon allow others into the mix. And Kucherov forced his way into the mix last year, no doubt. Austin Matthews got into the conversation by virtue of just the raw goal total that he's able to put up, which is quite spectacular. But to win a Hart Trophy in today's NHL, you almost need McDavid and McKinnon getting hurt and missing enough games to get yourself into the conversation and then taking advantage of the opportunity from there. That would be my take on Hart Trophy. And look, very few defensemen have won Hart Trophy to begin with. So it was already a tall mountain. It's a particularly tall mountain. It's Everest or K2 here in a McDavid-McKinnon world. Fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair. Fair.
Last chance to take advantage on specials on 2024 models at Surrey Mitsubishi. When you trade in your vehicle on a new 2024, Surrey Mitsubishi is going to give you $3,000 above market value for your trade. Take advantage. Rates as low as 1.9%. Extended warranty on 2024 PHEVs at no charge, plus a $1,000 credit towards winter tires, only while inventory lasts, and only at Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820, 104th Avenue in Surrey, or online at surreymitsubishi.ca. And shout out to Daniel from Surrey Mitsubishi, who has sent us video from Champions League, Inter and Arsenal. Enjoy it, buddy.
Wow.
Wish we could be
for
there.
him.
Oh, my God. The atmosphere at some of these stadiums in Europe for Champions League, amazing stuff. Top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. A 5-1 victory for the Vancouver Canucks in Anaheim. They can sweep the California trip with a win tomorrow in Los Angeles. Of course, this coming after the Saturday victory in San Jose. Hughes with 3 assists to become the third fastest defenseman in NHL history to reach 300 career assists. Slower only than Bobby Orr and Brian Leetch. And he nipped Paul Coffey, beat him by 1 game to 300 assists. Here's the Canucks captain on achieving this milestone.
Yeah, it means a lot, and I was just saying out there in another interview that I've had a lot of great teammates and people that have helped me and made some great friendships over the years, and hopefully you can just keep going the way we're going.
Yeah, I didn't want to bask too much. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's 300 assists, right? It's not 500. It's not 1,000. Mm-hmm. He'll get to 500, I'm quite sure. Daniel Wagner. I'm telling you, Quinn Hughes is even better than he was last year, and last year he was the best defenseman in the NHL. His slap shot has become a legitimate threat now. If you do see a pathway for Quinn Hughes to a Hart Trophy, if you do see a pathway for Quinn Hughes to win multiple Norrises in a row, basically become the leader in the clubhouse, as we discussed Cale Makar was going into last year and maybe into this year as well, I think it pivots on the number of goals he's able to score himself, and some of that pivots on the shot, which he has worked on tirelessly since we saw him as a rookie. Let's remember, as a rookie, it wasn't much of a shot at all. It has turned into a real weapon. He has put the goal out there that he wants to get to 20 goals. That's a high mark for a defenseman, and yet I sit there and I watch him and I think, yep, one of these years, particularly because of the way that shot has improved, but also because of how nifty he is pinching off the point and finding shooting angles, mostly on the power play, I see a year where he gets 20 goals.
Well, last year was scary because he basically just decided after the 22-23 season, I want to be better at scoring goals. So he more than doubled his career high just because he wanted to. So if that's the kind of change that this guy can make when he just decides to put his mind to something, I mean, look out. And he's only got 2 right now. I don't know if, do you think Pettersson touched it last night? I don't know. But should have had his 3rd perhaps. Nevertheless, his offense that's created because of his shot. And I have no doubt he's getting to 15 this year. No doubt. Whether he can get to 20, boy, that is a lot of goals.
He leads the Canucks now with 12 points. It's 1 better than Brock Besser. It's 2 better than Miller and Garland. He's now playing an average of 25 minutes on the button per night.
Still only the 3rd highest average time on ice for his career, though. Mm-hmm. He's played more before.
And as we discussed yesterday, the shots on goal, he's got 43. He's averaging nearly 4 shots per game as a defenseman.
He's exactly on his pace of last year, basically, for shots. He had 200 to 199 last year. He's an eighth of the way through the season, and he's an eighth of the way, basically, to his total. He's probably a little ahead of that pace, actually.
And then there's this from J-Pat, and this has sort of been a pet stat for Blake and I. We started this back in the Chris Tanev days because we marveled at how you could have a defensive defenseman who plays that many minutes against that quality of competition and takes so few penalties. Well, guess what? Hughes is great at that too. As Jeff notes, on top of everything else he does better than most, Hughes hasn't taken a penalty yet this season. He leads the team in ice time. He faces the tough matchups. He's the focus of every opponent, and he has somehow avoided a trip to the box, maybe at a Lady Bing.
I was going to say, and I don't know.
It is a league trophy. It's not necessarily a...
How many defensemen have won the Lady Bing? Mm-hmm. Like, not many. Usually that's a forward thing because they can avoid it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. No, but that's it. When you defend, you tell me you're not going to occasionally get your stick up in someone's hands for a hooking call, right?
Slavin's got a couple.
Get your stick in somebody's skates for a tripping call. Have to grab a hold, take the hand off the stick and grab a hold of a guy because you're beaten on the first step. All of these things happen routinely to just about every defenseman in the National Hockey League. And yet so far, it's only 11 games, but so far, Quinn Hughes hasn't been called for a penalty, hasn't had to resort to those sorts of tactics to defend. And that might even be the best part about Hughes. It's not just the gaudy offensive totals and the chases that he has with history. It's the fact that when he first came into the league, people just thought he would be another one of these undersized, high-scoring defensemen that weren't really foundational pillars to your organization because of their inability to defend. I saw a tweet this week about if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan and Lane Hudson turns into Shane Gostisbehere, are you happy? We went gaga over Gostisbehere's point totals a couple of times, but he didn't defend at a level that made him an absolute untouchable. No, you're staying here, or we're getting a sun, moon, and stars return in a trade. He's bounced around a little bit. Hughes has turned into an excellent defender on top of everything he does with the puck on his stick. 3
defensemen have won the Lady Bing in the last 50 years. All in the last 12 years, though. 2 for Jacob Slavin, including he's the reigning champ, and Brian Campbell back in 2012.
Ah, yes. Brian Campbell. Soupy.
He wouldn't hurt a fly. No surprise he got a Lady Bing.
Smooth skating, playmaking, creating defenseman.
Yeah.
Besser, Danton Heinen, Kiefer Sherwood, all go 1 goal, 1 assist for 2-point evenings. They score goals 58 seconds apart late in the first period, turn a 1-0 deficit into a 2-1 lead. Elias Pettersson, Jake DeBrusk get goals. Big week for Vancouver scoring changes, huh? You had Garland get a second assist off a scoring change from Saturday in San Jose. You had poor Brian White have a goal taken away by MLS scoring change in the Sunday 3-0 romp over LAFC. And then you have the scoring change last night with a Hughes goal to Pettersson, which gets Pettersson his second, and probably feels good about that, and gets Hughes the milestone 300 assists. Miller, Garland, Blueger, and Brandstrom all at assists last night. Want to get to balanced scoring, the newcomer shining, of course, Kevin Lankinen being a huge part of that. But first, what are our friends at Yellow Dog and Neighborhood up to?
They've got to remind you about the fresh hop beers. There's now not 1, not 2, but 3 fresh hop beers available from Yellow Dog Brewing. That's the Alpha Dog Hazy Pale, the Nutrix Hazy IPA, and Little Dog Syndrome Double IPA. A lot of hops here. Now available in select locations across BC. Get them while you can. And back into the
chat.
YouTube chat. Jeff saying, how long until we pivot to Petey is playing great? He's just getting terrible puck luck. You don't have to wait any longer for that, Jeff. That's going to come up throughout the show. I think people are there. He's just getting bad luck. I'm not quite there, but other people are.
The balanced scoring continues for these Vancouver Canucks, and the newcomers playing a role as they are just about each and every night now. We mentioned the goals from Heinen and Sherwood. Sherwood leading the National Hockey League in hits. He's also up to fifth in Canucks scoring with 7 points, including 3 goals. Blake, he's playing 12 minutes and 47 seconds.
That's good points per minute.
Holy cow, yeah. 72 hits, incidentally, which leads the National Hockey League.
He is a fan favorite.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly for the young fans. They love his he's active. He's loud. He rattles the glass, and 7 times he's celebrated points on the ice. I mean, he does everything.
And quickly, Teddy Blueger, who last year got a lot of shine playing between Joshua and Garland on what we called the best third line in hockey for a while. Well, Teddy Blueger is there. The wingers have changed, but Blueger, Heinen, and Sherwood becoming one of the best third lines in hockey yet again.
Are you calling Blueger the kingmaker?
For the Vancouver.
Is that it?
Causation is not always correlation is not always causation, but Teddy, this is really good work with 4 different line mates over the last 2 years. In fact, Quinn Hughes was talking about this group last night. Mike, let's play that clip. Quinn Hughes talking about that third line and all the contributions they're getting from Heinen, Blueger, and Sherwood.
Yeah, I can't say enough about those guys, and just everyone knows how excited I was that we added Kiefer this summer, and he's just been tremendous. He brings it every game, doesn't take a day for granted, and his compete level is something we can all aspire to. But I think Teddy's just been an amazing player for us the last 2 years, and you saw what that third line did for us last year. And Heinen, it was nice to see him get on the board tonight. He's been great as well. So if we want to be a really, really good team, we're going to need all 4 lines to contribute, and we've had that.
I winced a little bit at Teddy Blueger's 2-year, $1.8 million cap hit per year contract. But at this rate, you cannot have qualms about it. If you're going to get, and he'll tail off. I don't think he's going to get 6 points every 11 games. But anything close to this, well, that makes 1.8 over 2 years pretty damn palatable, because you're going to get penalty killing and a lot of other work from him.
Well, and in the case of Sherwood, he was saying he doesn't take any day in the NHL for granted. This was a guy who couldn't crack the U.S. national team development program, right? That's where, if you're a great up-and-coming teenage hockey player in the U.S., more often than not, you matriculate to that program. So he goes and plays in the USHL. And he plays 3 seasons in the USHL for the Youngstown Phantoms in the tough Rust Belt of Eastern Ohio. He's a Columbus, Ohio-born kid. Then to Miami University in Ohio for 3 seasons. Comes out as a college free agent. Signs with the Anaheim Ducks organization. Winds up playing 50 games in his second professional year for a bad Anaheim team coached by Randy Carlyle. Then Dallas Aikens comes in. They're still a bad team.
Tell me Carlyle didn't have faith in the young player. Shocking.
He played him 50 times. Although he wasn't the youngest. He's 29 years old now.
He's 29 now,
and then he matriculates to a pretty good Colorado Avalanche team where it's harder to crack the lineup, and plays a couple seasons there, 27 combined games, 29 if you include the playoffs. Then to Nashville. And it was only last year that he really becomes a National Hockey League regular. I mean, you can count the 50-game Anaheim season, I suppose, on a bad club, but you're sort of a fringe player at that point. Last year, he becomes a bona fide NHL player, and this year he's taken off. I mean, late bloomer to be sure, 28, 29. But wow, what a signing. We talked yesterday with John Shannon that Kevin Lankinen, probably the best free agent signing right now in the National Hockey League. Kiefer Sherwood's probably on the podium, Blake. So that's exceptional work from Alvin and the Canucks front office, and particularly their pro scouting, which has got a heck of a lot better under this regime.
And his age that you brought up, 29, it makes his story even more incredible. That he's been around all these years, and no one has picked up on his skill set and gone, I can do something with that.
Yep.
I mean, you give credit to him. Maybe he's developed increasingly here in the last couple of years. Maybe that's just it. Maybe it's more on the player at that point, but I don't know. That seems suspicious to me. He's been around long enough.
There are scouting misses, and he's clearly one of them, just like Dakota Joshua was one.
Right.
Kevin Lankinen now has points in every game, and it's now a sizable amount of games. He leads National Hockey League starting goaltenders, and there's a few backups, including our old friend Casey DeSmith, who are above him in this category. But, again, games played is the thing. Lankinen's holding down a starter's role. DeSmith is not. He leads NHL starters with a 2.09 goals against average. His .923 save percentage is tied for fourth among starting goaltenders.
There's a guy named Connor Hellebuck. Like, that's the company he's keeping.
And he's tied for second in the league in goaltending wins with 6.
It's incredible. I mean, and
8
where would they be
played,
without him? Where would they be without him?
Points in all of them, 6 victories.
Like, I think they're a 500 team if it's She Loves and Patera.
Oh.
Like, that's
based on what you've seen from Artie so far this year, you might be lucky to be 500.
You might be. But they're 4 games above. I bet you they're 500 with him.
They're 4 points back of LA now for the division lead with 3 games in hand on the Kings, of course, going into Crypto.com Arena tomorrow. And they actually got a chance to practice there today. You almost never get a chance to practice at Crypto and formerly Staples. Used to always have to go out to El Segundo to practice at the Kings facility.
Well, they lost a full-time tenant, of course.
The Clippers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's still a really busy building.
It is very busy, yeah.
So they're practicing there later today. 4 back of LA, 3 games in hand. 2 back of Vegas for second in the division, game in hand. And they'd be second in the division by points percentage right now. They're 8th in the league by points percentage at .682. Why is that significant? As we discussed last year a fair bit, go through the long history of the Stanley Cup champion since we moved to a 21-team league. More often than not, they are in the top 10 in the overall league standings. You have a few outliers that have won the Cup from below 10th in the overall league standings, but that's pretty much one of your rules. If you're looking for a Stanley Cup champion outside of the occasional outlier, you're looking at teams that are in the top 10 of the overall
and
league
you just don't want to put yourself behind the 8 ball at the start of the season where you're forced to play catch-up. You just don't want to do that. And
for a second straight year, they're not doing that. And we certainly are familiar with the catch-up game from years gone past, and it almost never worked out for the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah.
As it generally doesn't. I mean, the American Thanksgiving thing is a rule is the thing. You're outside the playoff bar come American Thanksgiving. There are very few teams that typically climb up above the bar from there. You're typically about 20 games into the season, about a quarter of the way through the season. And in a 3-point league where you're going to have a lot of teams that lose games but manage their losses and get points, it is difficult to make up ground. Thankfully, right now, the Canucks on the correct side of that bar. And Coach Tocchet was, pleased. And look, Rick hasn't been pleased a lot this year. Has talked a lot about still waiting for our first 60-minute effort. Still waiting for our first complete game. Still got things in the process that aren't quite there and managing to win some games even with an imperfect process. Coach's tune changed a little bit last night. He was quite happy. Take a listen.
We didn't give as many. I thought we were really clean. Not a couple, but odd man rushes has been a problem this year for us. I think it was one of our better games. I think that helps when you play. They got some young, talented players. They're going to be good. But I think when we limited their odd man rushes, it really helped us.
Yeah, well, it should.
Yeah.
And as we talked about yesterday, that's the lowest scoring team in the National Hockey League. A ton of young offensive talent. It's just not happened for them early this year. Very infrequently cracked 3 goals this year. Didn't again last night. Had relied on Dostal, who had been terrific for them goaltending-wise. And alas, by no means a world beater or a giant to the National Hockey League.
But while you're waiting for guys to show up.
Take care of the business you need to take care of.
And while you're waiting for Elias Pettersson to find his scoring touch, it's been quieter lately for JT Miller even.
Quite quiet, actually.
While you're waiting for these guys to find their offensive engines and Thatcher Demko on the sidelines, you know what? Just win the games that you should win. And then work on beating the Kingpins when you absolutely have to and when those guys are rounding into form. And it may be starting to show now for Elias Pettersson.
Let's get to this JPAT tweet then. Says he had the kind of night in Anaheim that in the past would have yielded a goal and 3 assists. A game-high 6 shots on 9 attempts, and those are both very good metrics for Elias. I mean, they're good for any player, but especially for Elias right now.
Yeah.
6 shots on goal, 9 attempts. As you had talked about, he's passing up shots. He's too deferential. Well, 9 attempts, 6 shots. His individual Corsi for nearly 77%. The shots with Elias on the ice were 7-2 in Vancouver's favor at even strength, and his expected goals for at 74%. All of those are superior metrics.
What you want to see now is none of this momentum, because he had it in San Jose, he had it in Anaheim. It can't disappear against the division-leading Kings.
Against the better opponent, absolutely.
You can't look like you're ready to challenge for a Hart and a Selke against these teams and then disappear against the LA Kings. So I'm not saying bottom line, but the effort, the optics need to look the same versus the LA Kings.
I was struck by the story Ben Kuzma wrote in the Province earlier this week, quoting former Vancouver Canucks head coach Bruce Boudreau about Pettersson. And Bruce acknowledges what we all see there. Doesn't look excited, frustrates easily. But Bruce went on and said, your job as a coach is to basically be a psychiatrist for 23 different personalities. And he said, quote, I told JT Miller, I'm going to come after you like the head of a snake. And JT said, put it on me. He wants that. And I don't think PD likes that kind of thing. You have to treat him differently. And then goes on to tell a story about his first game there. Pettersson actually went up to him, and I believe Bruce shared this at the time and said, I think I can be a pretty good penalty killer. I'd like an opportunity to contribute on the penalty kill. And Bruce was like, great, absolutely. I do wonder, and this is an ongoing storyline that we've already tracked and will continue to track as this Vancouver Canucks season goes on. But I think Rick Tocchet's instinct and his coaching instinct is to hard conversations, keep guys accountable, be honest when you're communicating with fans and media. And I'm just not sure that's the best match for Elias and the best way to go about getting through to Elias. He was tough on him early in the year. The sort of rhetoric had died down a little bit, Blake, and then, wow, looky here, Elias's level elevates. I believe there was a time at one point last year where I think it was you and Jeff started talking about, just don't talk about him. Don't talk to him. Don't talk about him. Just leave him alone. He wants to be left alone. Leave him alone. See if that helps.
Well, banging your head against the walls is not always going to get the results. I mean,
the thrashings will continue until morale improves.
Well, honestly, I need to be proven.
No, I hear you. Yep.
Great.
I completely get it.
There's traction there. Great. Tell me when he arrives.
Right. I mean, the other thing I'll say is, and we'll discuss this with Lawrence Gilman, and John Shannon has been harping on this the last 2 times we've had him on the show. We are impatient as fans and media. There is no doubt about that. And when we look back on this first 10, 11 games of the Vancouver Canucks season, I think we're probably all guilty of being a little impatient given the totality of changes on this team. Like, there's part of us that thinks about this Canuck team 24-25 as a continuation from last year, because last year they changed the story, wrote a new narrative of being a playoff team, being a contending club. And yet, night to night, Blake, you look at who's in their lineup and how much actual change they have had personnel-wise, and it's significant. I mean, it almost looks a little bit more like a team at the bottom of the standings that's looking to recast and do better this year with a new group of players. Heinen, Sherwood, Ratu last night, DeBrusk, Sprong. That's 5 forwards who did not play last year. Defense, Brandstrom, Desharnais. That's 2 of 6 defensemen who did not play last year. Goaltender, Kevin Lankinen. So they had 8 guys in the lineup last night of the 20.
It's been as high 19, as 9.
Yeah, it's been as high as 9, who are new to the Vancouver Canucks. That takes a while to integrate. In fact, I think you can look at the record and say they've done really well on that accord.
You can't pretend the games now don't count for the same as the game in February, though, and March. Games matter. You do have to win.
Nobody's saying that.
And so that's why they are getting away with it right now. They are winning games. Their record is exactly where you wanted, but in the most surprising way. And that's why I think it is a positive time for this to happen, if you will. If there is a silver lining to this happening now, is I think eventually it will come around. If the depth had not shown up here, Matt, if guys like Heinen and Sherwood had taken more time to get used to themselves in this lineup, my goodness, what a disaster this would be.
Yep, fair enough.
And if Lankinen doesn't show up, but they are getting away with it. They got the points now, and now they've had the ability to work through some Pettersson foibles to get to this point.
Incidentally, do you have the Canucks game sheet there, the analytics up?
Like the
from last
advanced
night?
Stats? No, I can get them though.
Just because, we've harped on him and Blake more than me, but I thought it was a pretty good game from Vincent Desharnais last night. That pair with Brandstrom, they were each +2. They played more than 16 minutes a night. They combined for 3 shots. I'd be interested in what the advanced stats say. But, and I realize it's Anaheim as well.
Yeah, it's by far the best I've seen. I haven't looked at every single one of his games, but he was 62.5 in terms of Corsi for percentage. So that was certainly good.
So maybe
shots for and against, 5-4 in his favor. Goals for and against, 2-0 in his favor. And
so it confirms the eye test.
Expected goals were in his favor, too.
That was a much better game.
Yeah.
Last piece of business we want to get to here today, and it kind of works by way of error and omission because we had all counted out Connor McDavid for this Saturday showdown against the Vancouver Canucks at Rogers Arena once they get back off the road in California. We thought that the first game between these now playoff rivals from last year would be -97, the best player in the world. Well, Connor McDavid is back tonight against the Vegas Golden Knights, and one suspects that if all goes well tonight, that he will be in the Oilers lineup on Saturday. Of course, the Canucks went undefeated against Edmonton in the regular season last year before bowing out to the Oilers in 7 games in the second round. And if you're a ticket holder for Saturday, well, you've either got a ticket now to see the Canucks against the best player in the world and their new rivals, or you have a few extra dollars in your pocket when you sell it on the second.
They must not be too worried about re-injuring because it's a heavy game to drop back into the lineup for. Like, it's not like they're taking on the Ducks tonight.
But there's also part of me that wonders if Connor's looking at it going, give me Vegas and Vancouver. that's the derby, right? Those three teams in the Pacific.
Well, he's probably looking at it
those are
going,
the ones you want him for.
And he's probably looking at it going, these guys need me right now.
Well, that's the other thing. Is
And-
Edmonton's losing a little touch here.
Yeah.
With how well the top of the Pacific is playing right now. And full credit to the Kings. And the Kings have, as we've talked about, they've played some extra games here. But they're off to a good start. Vegas is off to a good start. And I think you can now say the Vancouver Canucks are off to a good start as well. Edmonton, boy, there's something about autumn hockey for the Oilers. Continue to trail the Flames. 5th place in the division, 13 points. A very pedestrian 6-6-1. With a -10 goal differential, too, for Edmonton, huh?
Let's say they had lost these 2 games.
2-4-1 on home ice.
Let's say McDavid doesn't play versus Vegas and Vancouver, and they lost to both, they'd be 6-8-1 in 15 games. Is that right? 15 games? Yeah. Last year, their terrible start.
Yeah.
They were 5-9-1. They'd be like basically like right alongside their terrible start of a year ago.
Yeah.
So
and
they don't want to risk that.
And I hear that, but I can remember when some of our friends from the Nation Network were down from Edmonton last year when they were in the throes of just being awful, and Woodcroft was effectively marching the plank. And I can remember going to lunch with them and saying, there's not a single bit of me that would worry about the Edmonton Oilers over an 82-game schedule. They will get it back. They will be fine. They made it to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. And I feel the same way this year.
They needed a separate 8 and 16 game winning streak to get there.
I completely understand that. And they loaded up on the wing with Arvidsson and Skinner, and I'm not 100% sure that they're a better team this year and that will work out for them. But I also have no doubt that they will be a Stanley Cup playoff team.
They'll be a playoff
and
team.
a dangerous team in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by Greta, a fantastic spot for all the games, home and away. We'll be there for Canucks Army viewing parties throughout the season, minutes from the arena, steps from the stadium, pregame, postgame. Stop on by, check out the great street food menu. The Big Mac poutine is very decadent. And then there's the arcade. Air hockey, Donkey Kong, Mario Kart.
Driving games. You've got the air hockey and the hoops,
I actually shouldn't
basketball.
say Donkey. Do they have Donkey Kong? I know they have Mario Kart.
No. Probably have Donkey.
Weekly drink
Pac-Man
specials
for sure.
at Greta. Yes, 50 Westcourt. I think they have a Mrs. Pac-Man, actually. Greta Bar let the game.
I don't think she's married. I think it's Ms.
Really?
Yeah.
Is there not a Mrs. and a Ms.?
I don't think so.
Was there not a whole Pac-Man family at one point? And incidentally, yeah, there is a Mrs. Pac-Man. Oh, no, you're right. Ms. Pac-Man.
Thank you.
Here's the thing about Miss Pac-Man. The game doesn't change.
No, just a bow.
You're still a yellow circle, munching away, trying to avoid the ghosts.
Yeah, they added a bow.
Greta Bar let the games begin. Lawrence Gilman's going to join us, former Canucks AGM and NHL executive. Patrick Johnston, the Province and Post Media, has got a little bit of news on Thatcher Demko. All of that is coming up. It's time for our Bet365 Bets of the Day. This segment brought to you by Bet365, proud sponsor, Sekeres and Price. We got to wrap it up here. We have these grade 9s in studio from Handsworth. They have to produce a podcast from their day of job shadowing dad.
I think all you need is to watch this for a few hours, and then you can basically do it yourself.
Okay.
That's basically what we've told them.
Yeah. Blake told them, no. You have an assignment in here today, kids. You have to produce a podcast. So they're up next. We got to clear out of here. I'll make it quick. I know it was the Raiders. I know it was at home. But I think Cincinnati got well last week. And I do think Baltimore plays the sorts of coverages that play into Joe Burrow's hands. So I'm going to take the Bengals +6. Not brave enough to take them to win, although maybe a small wager there. But I'm going to take the Bengals +6 tomorrow against Baltimore on Thursday Night Football.
I'll take Vegas against an Oilers team that lets down because Connor's back. He'll save us.
Yeah, sometimes that happens, right?
+135 on the visiting Knights.
I like it. Counterintuitive Blake Price. And I say that how many times have we seen, Blake, that your best player is out and everybody knuckles down and plays harder, has great details of their game because they realize, oh, so-and-so's out. Better play my assignment today because we don't have the firepower that we normally have. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets, so whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION, new code here, NATION, when opening that account. Lawrence Gilman coming up next.
I'll be honest, I don't get to many games anymore, whether it be at the arena or the stadium. Ticket availability cost, it's a bit of an issue these days. So I prefer to go where there's atmosphere and I know I can get in. Greta Bar YVR. Soak up all the atmosphere with your fellow fans and enjoy a great night with a great street food menu. I prefer the poutine. Weekly drink specials as well at Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. And we'll be having our viewing parties there all season long as well. Your pregame, your postgame, it's at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin.
Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment powered by Square. If you run a restaurant, you're probably too busy for this ad. You're thinking about how to get more orders flowing and new locations open. You got to get customers, keep them coming back. So really, you're already talking and thinking about Square because Square Restaurant Tech helps more than 400,000 restaurants do all those things and more. So when you're thinking about your restaurant, think bigger. Think Square. Go to square.ca and see why Square is big in restaurants. Lawrence Gilman is a former assistant general manager with the Vancouver Canucks, NHL executive with the Leafs, Coyotes, and Jets. He joins us from his Toronto home. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Matt. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Well, I'll hand it to you. Blake and I had a little bit of a debate about this yesterday, but you told us last week, Elias Pettersson, too good a player to get it going. You liked his game last night in Anaheim.
I did. I think when he showed up on the stat sheet with 6 shots, had a goal, and was in the play around the net all night, I'd be very happy if I were managing the Canucks looking at his game last night. He's just too good a player to not come around. You know, his combination of skill and size and his hockey sense, it's elite. So people just need to be patient. This guy's a great player.
To me, last night is exactly the kind of thing is why people got mad the first time, the first 8 games, because they know that it's there, Lawrence, and at times it has the appearance of not just him not caring. Versus San Jose, what I disagreed with Matt is that I'm okay with that game. He tried versus San Jose. I could see the engagement. I'll agree with Matt there. But without the bottom line, I wasn't willing to really ballyhoo it too much. Now he strung 2 of those efforts together, and he's got a bottom line. This is starting to look like traction, but I think it was the fact that he didn't look engaged, Lawrence, that people had issues with it, and it's good to see that there's excitement there for a player.
Well, his body language isn't great, right? Like he's as we talked about either last week or the week before, he's aloof and distant, and that doesn't mean he doesn't care, though. That's just his nature, and I think he's a player who does get frustrated, and when he gets frustrated, his body language probably gets a lot worse. But as pucks start to go into the net, and, I actually have felt from the beginning of the year that he has played well. He just hasn't had a lot to show for it. And his line mates have missed, opportunities where he's put the puck right on their tape, right, within 2 feet of an empty net. And they just, for whatever reason, haven't been able to convert. Eventually, the law of averages is going to take over, and this player is going to start to produce. And again, it's the process you have to be concerned about. And from my perspective, the process has been pretty good with this player, and it seems to be getting better, at least over the last couple of games.
On the patience file, Lawrence, it's one thing I've been wondering about here with the Canucks, who have been good, but not great. How long does it take for a new player to integrate with his new teammates, and how exacerbated is that when you're integrating like 6 to 8 new guys on any given night in an NHL lineup?
It hasn't taken Kiefer Sherwood very long to integrate.
It hasn't.
No, and I mean, like the more new players let's back up for a sec. Hockey is a game of chemistry. Line mates have to get comfortable with each other. They need to learn where the player needs to learn where his line mate is tends to be or what his tendencies are when he doesn't have the puck. Where does he go to find open ice where he's comfortable? And, chemistry takes time to form. And when you're adding more players, like if you're adding 6 to 8 new players, it's going to take, in most instances, it's going to take a little bit of time for those players to learn the tendencies of the guys that they're playing with. So in the case of the Canucks, I've actually thought like Danton Heinen has fit in pretty well. I thought, again, another player that hasn't had a lot to show for his performance has been Jake DeBrusk. I thought he's been, reasonably good. It does take time and people need to be patient. But from my vantage point, I would be fairly happy with what I've seen from the new players, the multitude of new players that have come into the Canucks lineup.
Do you quibble with the fact that it is the role players that are really helping you get a lot of these wins? That, not that JT Miller and Brock Besser aren't off to good starts. They're off to good starts, but not great starts. Do you care that it's been the depth that has been the reason, or do you say, hey, that's why they're there? They're allowed to perform as well.
No, I wouldn't care. I'd be happy. No. The fact that the third line had 2 goals last night, again, I'd be very happy about that. You don't have to worry about the Bessers and the JT Millers or the Elias Petterssons again of the world, because they're great players, they're strong players, and they're going to come around. But it is a testament to the coaching staff, to Rick Tocchet and his staff, that these new players, particularly the bottom end guys, have really come in and been effective. He's obviously empowered them and he's given them confidence, and they've responded with it.
You mentioned Sherwood, Lawrence, and I gotta say, like he had 120 NHL games under his belt with Anaheim and Colorado, and I'm not sure I knew much, if anything, about him until last season with Nashville when he jumped on the radar. Tell us, what did you know about this guy early in his career? A college free agent who played some early games with the Anaheim Ducks and kind of was a bounce around, up and down guy for years thereafter before establishing himself last year. Tell us about the Kiefer Sherwood you knew as your organization tracked him.
Well, I admittedly, I didn't know much about him other than the fact that I sort of looked at him as an energy player, a bottom end guy who has great work ethic and comes to play every night, but doesn't necessarily, have a lot to show for it. But he's an aggressive forward checker, reasonable speed, kind of a buzz bomb player that if he found the right environment, could conceivably begin to produce, and that seems to be the case here in Vancouver.
The play of Quinn Hughes on both sides of the puck. Did you expect him to get to this point? Maybe this early in his career, the fact that he has improved the defending side so well and yet can still have all the offense at his disposal like we saw last night?
Well, we spoke about this either last week or the week before, where I have come to realize how wrong I was about this player. He's so much better in both ends of the rink than I thought he was, and he's a far greater competitor than I ever thought he was. He was arguably the best player on the ice last night, and he truly is the engine that is driving the Canucks as I watch them and pay more attention to him. He can do things with the puck that few players can do. His confidence is off the charts. I don't think this guy, I don't think people have seen his ceiling yet. I think he's just going to get better and better and better. And yes, it has surprised me, but I can tell you most nights, he's the most enjoyable player to watch on the ice.
And you talked about body language of Pettersson. The body language of Pettersson, he just seems so unflappable, Lawrence. Like, I won't say he's in a Barca lounger. He's not quite, Bieksa there on the end boards where you were just like, Kevin, watch out. But there is this calm confidence that everything's going to be okay when Quinn Hughes has got the puck.
Well, he knows that he's going to have the puck as long as he wants it.
I guess.
He can stick handle, in a phone booth, as the expression goes, and he can, wheel around virtually every player on the ice. So when you have that kind of skill and you couple it with that kind of confidence, there's no limit to what you can do on the ice. And it's really rare. Like, Canucks fans should really appreciate what they have in this player. I mean, he's a true star player without a doubt.
Darren Dreger mentioned to us earlier in the week, Lawrence, that teams are already calling the Buffalo Sabres on Bowen Byram, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that Byram is heading towards restricted free agency with arb rights on a team that has, needless to say, some huge investments at his position in Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power. Tell me about the Bowen Byram, the ex-Vancouver Giant that you know, the player evaluation, and talk to me about how tricky this next contract is for him and perhaps more urgently for Kevin Adams and the Buffalo Sabres.
Well, first of all, he's, as I said on your podcast in the past, goal scorers get paid, whether they're forwards or defensemen. 2 years ago, he had 11 goals in his season. Last year, he had 10, if I'm not mistaken. And as of right now, he's on pace for about 15. And his situation is complicated by the fact that not only is he a restricted free agent, he's also eligible for salary arbitration, which means that he has the ability to go to an independent third party to determine what his salary is going to be. And the Sabres, or whoever should own his rights at that time, are going to have a decision to make. You either go short term and potentially arbitrate with the guy, or you buy him through free agency. And obviously, if you're buying him through free agency, defensemen of his ilk are making $8-9 million or so. I gave a brief cursory look at what the market would be for RFA defensemen that are in a similar position, and I look at a player like Sean Dursey in Utah, who is also an offensive producing defenseman, and he shot from below where Byram was to being a $6 million player. So, I think that's the range for the guy in his RFA years. And then it depends on what you want to do. You want to blend it. You want to sign him for an 8-year deal. Then you're going to pay him for 5 years of UFA. That's going to be big glue, as the expression goes. But it falls into the category of problems you don't mind having if you're running a team, that you've got a player who is productive and can help you win. As I said, goal scorers get paid.
Yeah. In terms of trade value, he's a first-round pick plus if the Sabres want to move him this year.
Oh, for sure.
We have a phrase on this show: sun, moon, and stars. Yeah. Do you pay sun, moon, and stars for him?
Well, he's not the most complete player in my estimation. I think there's soft aspects to his defensive game, which may even themselves out over the course of his career. But make no mistake, he's a 23-year-old, 10 to 15 goal scoring defenseman who can play, run your power play. And yes, that is a commodity that is going to be extremely sought after by teams. So I would say if you're a team, if they put him out there, it's going to be an auction, right? And when there's an auction, once you get somebody on the hook, if it's a first-round pick, a prospect, and a roster player, let's say, you shop it around. You take that to the next team and the next team and the next team, and you see if you can improve upon it. But if they put him out in the market, they're going to get a handsome return for him.
Is the answer just goaltending? Like, why hasn't it worked for Buffalo to have 3 young stud defensemen like Dahlin, Power, and Byram? Shouldn't they be better if these players are who we think they are?
You can't expect your young team, a team with young players, to wander through the wilderness on their own and find their way. The key to the rebuild, and I fortunately have not been part of that type of rebuild, is you need to at some point surround them with players that can act as barometers and can teach them the way. A good example is Chicago goes out and gets a Nick Foligno, who serves as an example to a young Connor Bedard. Buffalo needs, in my estimation, to improve their veterans and play and get guys in who play hard for 60 minutes and can teach these guys what it's like to be a pro in the National Hockey League.
Yoka Harju there too. They've got 4 guys, that are just babies, really.
No, it's hard to see Buffalo not at some point turning it around, and yet here we are with the Sabres. Lawrence, help me on this, and I'll have you know, Canucks fans remain some of the best defensemen you guys ever had with regards to the Roberto Luongo contract. All these years later, it still comes up how unfairly the Canucks were punished for cap recapture, and it particularly gets mentioned when we see teams go and really go over and above with LTIR like Vegas did last year with Mark Stone. We understand there's an undercurrent of unhappiness amongst general managers in the league with LTI, and how it's been used, and in some cases abused. What's your sense? Do we have enough squeaky wheels here to get a change here? What's your forecast for the way teams like Vegas and Tampa before them have approached the use of LTIR?
To begin with, there is a reason for LTIR, and I'll give you a good example for that. Los Angeles' best defenseman, Drew Doughty, gets severely injured in training camp. And he's their number one defenseman. He's one of the top defensemen in the league, and he's an $11 million player. So you have the Kings potentially starting the season with $11 million. If you don't have an LTIR system, you have a team that's playing $11 million short against every team every night. And the purpose of the LTIR is just that in the case of a player who's significantly injured, that a team should have some cap relief in order to go out and get replacement players to give them an opportunity, and it shouldn't torpedo their season. The problem becomes that it's a slippery slope and it can be abused. Now, the National Hockey League does have mechanisms in place to ensure that teams are not, quote unquote, abusing the system. It's difficult to prove, though, when you go to a team and you say, how hurt is he? And they produce medical records and a doctor attests to the fact that, no, he's really injured. And yes, he magically got healthy on the first game of the playoffs. And, if I'm an opposing team playing Las Vegas or Vegas in, game one, round one, and suddenly this guy appears after not having played the majority of the season, it's a little infuriating. But the fact is, that is the system. And, there are teams, obviously, on the lower end of the economic scale in the National Hockey League, the Columbus Blue Jackets of the world, the Nashville Predators of the world, they have a greater problem with it than the Toronto Maple Leafs or the New York Rangers or the Montreal Canadiens that are out there. I don't know what the answer is. I know that there are some general managers who feel that there should be some form of salary cap in the playoffs. That could be something that gets addressed in collective bargaining, although I'm not certain. No one's asking me my opinion on that stuff. But I don't see LTIR going away. No. I could see theoretically some form of policing it that could change in the future.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely not going away. For what you outlined in the Drew Doughty example, it's a great one. The question becomes, is there some sort of way, by way of either enforcement, policing, or extending, as you also mentioned?
And if the Kings wanted to take on more salary, they are actually a prime candidate to do this right now with Drew Doughty. If they're not near the cap, but if they wanted to, they're an 8-3-3 team out of the gate.
Yeah, no, it's true.
If they wanted to acquire a big salary to get to the cap, they could then claim an additional $11 million and really make hay.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, that's all fine until Drew Doughty becomes healthy and is going to play again. And then
that's right.
Unless he gets magically healthy on day one of the playoffs.
That's right. This only works when you're able to keep the guy out for the balance of the regular season and bring him back for the playoffs. And for some, that has its detractors as well.
That's right.
Right? How ready are they to go? Dropped in to game one of a playoff series. It didn't work out for Vegas last year in round one. Lawrence, fabulous stuff. You make us smarter. Appreciate this. We'll catch up next Wednesday.
Thanks, guys. Have a good week.
It's happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day from Yellow Dog, the High Five Hazy IPA.
Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center, and I'm getting hungry.
You're going to get more hungry because I've discovered 2 new menu items on the White Spot Comfort menu that have got me very excited. We told you about the mini Yorkies. We told you about the chicken pot pie, the braised beef burger, the home-style pot roast. As I logged on, I found out the buttermilk chicken cordon brie burger is available. Hello. Wow. And how about this? And my kids would go crazy for this one. The prawn and bacon carbonara. So rich, so fill. That's the other thing with all these menu items. So filling too. You're not hungry at the end of this.
Good bang for the buck there.
Visit your local White Spot today.
Patrick Johnston covers the Canucks for the Province and Post Media. He joins us from his home office in Burnaby. How are you?
These white spot promos. I mean, we've been going now.
They're killing you, aren't they?
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm pleased to say that I have had the pot pies, so I can recommend that. But everything else also sounds delightful, and I'm hungry. And I wish we could have one like every hit. Wouldn't that? I should. Write that into next year's deal. How about
whoever we sponsor into the White Spot slot is immediately hungry upon us.
We need to talk to White Spot about a food drop here. Yeah. It's getting a little much here.
Let's do a live hit. I'll sit there. I'll be at the restaurant.
Sample it all.
White Spot, if you're listening.
From the booth at White Spot.
My heart is available.
Okay, so they squashed a bug last night. And I don't want to dwell on it too much because it turns out to be a reasonably easy victory against a terrible team.
But you do have to go get those bugs because if you don't, you look even worse, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I guess, my takeaway from it was, boy, is this a pretty good lineup, up and down, huh? Like there is, I know we're all talking about the second pair defense thing, but wow. Forward 1 through 12, top defense pair, goaltender 1 through 2 when Demko gets that's
PG. If they get everybody going this is a team that can go on an 8 or 10 game winning streak. I think honestly, if they got everybody clicking, is there any reason to believe they couldn't pull off a really long wagon win streak?
I mean, they certainly have the goals. We can see that, right? And you add Joshua to that mix, and this is a heck of a forward group. I think we knew that going in. It is something else to see, especially when you're playing a team as poor as the Anaheim Ducks. And I said this last time on Required. To me, that was the most important thing. They kind of squeezed out that win on Saturday, which kind of went, but you need to stomp on the bug, as Matt said, and they stomped on the bug last night, and that's a sign of a team that is making progress in my mind. Yeah, the wagon aspect, they're going to score the goals. It kind of comes down to, can the defense kind of hold on? And right now, Kevin Lankinen. Kevin Lankinen is going to, I think, ride. He is going to ride this horse as long as he can, and he's going to have that horse until whenever it is that Thatcher Demko comes back, which I think is starting to sound more and more like the end of the month, give or take. And that's, there's 10 games between now and the end of the month. So Kevin Lankinen is going to play the bulk of those games, and you're going to get fantastic goaltending in most of those games. That's the absolute reality. And so you get fantastic goaltending and adequate defending. You're going to score enough goals, I think, and you're absolutely going to go on a run here.
Did I hear a little news there about Thatcher Demko? What are you hearing? Well, no, he practiced with his team. He took shots from his teammates yesterday,
which was a step,
which was progress.
And, you can start pushing it out. In similar terms of how we could sort of think about, okay, where's Joshua at? What does he need? Realistically, no training camp, right? It's not just taking shots. It's the rhythms and getting yourself physically ready to do the reps, doing the reps, the consequences of all that. If all goes to plan, it sounds like the end of the month that's where they're now targeting for a return. I don't think they're necessarily going to say that publicly, but that's the sense I'm getting just poking around the edges of things and looking at what he's done. As you say, took shots, wasn't in oddly, disappointingly, no one on the road shot video, but here we are. But clearly got involved with more than he had been doing to this point. And we obviously saw him take shots off just Dakota Joshua the other day. The more that ramps up, the better it is. I mean, we can look at the calendar at this point now. They're practicing today and at Crypto, game tomorrow. So, we'll see what comes out of practice this afternoon, I guess. Day off Friday, practice Sunday, practice Monday. I have a hard time imagining they have both those days for practice, but I guess if you need Thatcher Demko to take shots, you figure that out. There are a whole bunch of practice days between now and the end of the month. It's again a very, very advantageous schedule for this team in terms of getting everybody back on, getting everybody in the lineup, resting guys who might need rest, guys like JT Miller who are skating around with banged up, all kinds of stuff. It's a very good situation for a team right now that needs to, needs to pile up some wins, has the opportunity to pile up some wins, and also get their guys back and healthy.
First of all, that was a shot at Harmon because he's the only guy on the road. You were saying,
Yeah, no, I heard that.
That was pretty deep.
Sly.
Are you going to tell Harmon or should I?
No. Hey, just hear my mouth for a second. They're 6-2-3.
Yes.
They're 8th in the National Hockey League by win percentage. They have gotten very little from their $11.6 million man. They have gotten very little, although he's been better recently, from their big free agent signing. And they don't have their Vezina Trophy finalist goaltender available.
And still probably have a big hole on defense. Realistically, right?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, but they're making it work. Yeah.
They're making
have
it work.
to be such a downer.
No, but he's agreeing with
No,
you.
but think of the upside here. If all of those things are clicking.
No, the upside is fantastic, right? Like the base they're working from, even from system, right? Like we know they aren't humming at full capacity in terms of playing style. They're still sorting that out.
And yet still,
they have
they've been very, very good.
Their opponents, they're doing lots of really good things, and that's not a surprise, I think, given what we've learned about the sort of the structure of what Rick Tocchet and Adam Foote look for from their team and what they've taught them to date, and how they've built it. I mean, it's a system that is meant to give these guys an opportunity to win. I mean, they have. Let's put it this way, guys. At 5-on-5, the Canucks have the second fewest shot attempts in the entire NHL. Like that. That is what we now know is Rick Tocchet hockey. I mean, it goes back to Arizona. This is a defense first approach, but the fact that they are out shooting their opponents night after night. I mean, they're 66 shot 66 shot attempts up on their opponents in that time. 11 games. I mean, that's 6 shots a game, right? Like that makes a difference. That adds up over the course of a season. They are building themselves a very, very nice little setup here. And in theory, they're only going to get better, assuming
given their PDO is right in the middle of the field. That almost makes it sound like they should be better than they are. Like if they're giving up so few chances and they're getting goaltending, I'm surprised that, I mean, they've got a 682 points percentage, but I'm surprised it's almost not better at that point.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is like, for as odd as it sounds, they're having some bit of puck luck here right now. Like they're 10.51, they're 10.5 shooting percentage at 5-on-5. Like that's a little bit above average. It's not last year, but it's still above average. But the point is that defensively, on the whole, for all the kind of oh my god that there have been emotional moments, it goes back to what Rick Tocchet said even after the first game. He said, it looked bad, but it actually wasn't that bad. And it's the quality of shots. They've gotten better. They've dialed down at giving away fewer quality shots. They're giving shots off the rush, which is a new thing, and that's a consequence of the system they're trying to play. They're trying to play a bit more up tempo. But the point is that they're giving away stuff in the middle, and that is bottom line what matters the most. And so defensively, there's a lot to build off. This is the thing to remember. You don't want to be the most defensive team in the NHL because that team never goes anywhere. We discussed this last spring. I wrote a thing about it last spring, but you want to be very sound defensively because you want to be able to play some offense. And the Canucks have the players play offense, and for the most part, they have been doing, especially the depth forwards, right? The thing about the likes of Kiefer Sherwood and when he's brought to the lineup, the way they're playing brings so much and gives them lots of opportunity. If they only had a power play, guys, imagine.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're looking for an area where the Canucks are lagging a little, it's the power play, clicking at 16.7%, 22nd in the league. We should also mention they're 5-1 on the road, fellas. I know they haven't had the hardest road schedule yet, but that's a pretty good mark.
But if I had $1 for every time I heard about a great forward-laden team that doesn't have like every year there's one or two of these teams that have a bunch of superstars and it just doesn't work on the power play. And I mean, does that just come down to coaching, PJ, or is it just bad luck? What is it?
Well, I mean, we look at how they play, and they have not been generating enough chances. We know that much. Even last night, look at it last night. You're playing a terrible penalty kill team that was, 50% at home coming into the game. Like, just a team that you should be feasting on. It was the one area they didn't. They had some decent looks. But this is, the consistency is not there. And yeah, I think I said this last week. In hindsight, I think they would have been smart to bring in someone to do just the power play, an outside person who doesn't know anybody, who comes and said, no, guys, this is what you're trying to do, and that's why it's not working. They needed to reconsider all that.
Like the Oilers and Leafs are below the Canucks. Oilers and Leafs should have good power plays too.
The logic isn't always there. The Oilers are going to find their way back. Like, let's be real. The Oilers are going to find their way back.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
And
like, that's a talent
and I would
thing.
think the Leafs
the most talented power play in the league. The Canucks have a very talented power play, a good collection of players. They should be better. I mean, Quinn Hughes, the way Quinn Hughes is playing, it makes no sense. The power play
doesn't.
Better.
Yeah. Well, and the Leafs too. I mean, Matthews, Riley, Marner, Nylander. They've got the personnel. Tavares. They have the personnel to make a power play work as well. In our ongoing discussion of how great Quinn Hughes is, answer me the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question: will Quinn Hughes be the best player in Canucks history?
Yes. Yeah, I think.
Why do you say that?
Well, first of all, the degree of difficulty from that position. I mean, you're kind of going, okay, is he better than just notionally Henrik Sedin, because Henrik was the center, right? Like that is the standard you're chasing. And as it stands, this is a guy that could put up 100 points playing defense. And it could do it several times, right? Like Henrik had a great career. Don't like this is, let's be clear. I'm talking about the career of Canucks. And Quinn Hughes, you just look at the age, you look at what he's already accomplished, the way he's pushing himself to be even better. I mean, it boggles the mind. And it's when you sit back and you realize who he keeps getting compared to. And this is where we're back to, right? Remember, this was last year, consistently every week. Here's the newest thing to compare him to Bobby Orr and Paul Coffey and Ray Bourque and Brian Leetch. We're in that window again, guys. Like, there's the 300 assist thing last night, but there was the three assist games before the age of 25. Like, it's nuts. Like, he's just he's under the age of 25 and he's doing all these things. Like, he is in the very beginning of his prime and he's doing all these things. And listen, if Henrik Sedin had been given more ice time, and I think in hindsight that clearly was it, and that was a failing of Mark Crawford and Brian Burks, was that they were afraid of playing young players. That this story might be different, but in the end, Henrik Sedin didn't get his prime time until he was older, and Quinn Hughes is just going to get more ice time in the prime time of his career, and that's going to add up.
There have been 15 100-point seasons by defensemen in National Hockey League history as recently as Erik Karlsson in 22-23. And when you say multiples, that's a lot of the same names on this list, headlined by Bobby Orr and Paul Coffey. So something to look to with Quinn Hughes.
It's staggering. You get there once. You'd think he'd get there at least once. Mm-hmm. And I'd have to go back and look at Coffey tape again. But I know Orr did this certainly. But the possession of the puck, of course, is defense, right? Like, I mean, it's the puck a long way away from your own net, and rather than just a dash down the ice, sort of how I envision Coffey, although I'd have to go look at tape again, or Al McInnes taking shots from the point. Like,
he has one too, 100-point season.
But again, a lot of that feasting on power play and feasting on shots from the point where he's not necessarily possessing the puck and keeping the puck out of his own net by virtue of that. I mean, Quinn Hughes he affects games. I think that's what people have to think about with the poll question, right? Is he affects games so much with the way that he plays.
Well, that's exactly it. The way he affects games is everything, and he's able to manage his way night after night. And it's not just that the Canucks are staggeringly good when he's on the ice and not nearly as good when he's off the ice. Like, the differential doesn't matter. It really is about what is happening when he's on the ice, and that's it, right? Like, the possession quality is so off the charts. You take out any of those Carolina guys, you look at the top of players who played 75 minutes or more in the NHL at 5-on-5 this year. Who has the best Corsi percentage? Take out the Carolina guys because they shoot from everywhere. I mean, obviously, are a very astute team. There are 5 guys at the top of the list. The only guy ahead of Quinn Hughes, other than that, is Elias Pettersson.
No, really?
Yeah. But you get the point, right?
Yeah.
Like Quinn Hughes is playing 20 minutes a night, and he is absolutely dominating puck possession. He's having a remarkable season after having an already remarkable season. It's going to be like this year after year after year. All things all things go well.
So the Vancouver Canucks screwed up by allowing Vasily Podkolzin to slip away. Discuss, Patrick.
No. Maybe the Canucks should play on Draisaitl to play with Vasily Podkolzin. That was their great
that's
failing.
right. That was their big failing this summer. Incidentally, you mentioned power play points by these 100-point defensemen. Coffey in 88-89, 64 of his 113 points on the power play. McInnes in 90-91, 63 of his 103 points on the power play. Talk about fattening up. Al McInnes scored 17 power play goals in a season as a defenseman. Wow. Absolutely astonishing. Had 28 that year.
I'll just remind everybody the 88-89 season was the year that Mario Lemieux, had Rob Brown on his wing, and Rob Brown got him to 199 points.
You're right.
Shout out to my old
right.
colleague Scott Brown.
BC boy Rob Brown got him.
Great. Rob Brown, 49 goals. Dragged Mario to 190.
Dragged Mario into the fight to the tune of 200 points. Answer me this. Does Bowen Byram intrigue you if you're the Vancouver Canucks? No, but knowing how big a trade it would have to, you're giving up a lot here if you're bringing this guy in, and he's in RFA with Arbrights at the end of the season, so you have to get about the business of extension as well. In that vein, with those two elements there, how attractive is Bowen Byram to you?
Well, that's what I was going to say. You say, absolutely love the player, and then you look at the bits that come at the end of it. You're making choices at that point, right? Like you are committing to something. Sorry, you are choosing not to commit to someone you have already now. So Brock Besser, or I guess Thatcher Demko. I don't know, but like you're having to make some hard choices, and that's part of the deal, and that's why the salary cap exists. This is about taking big swings. Bowen Byram would add a lot to this lineup. There is absolutely no doubt about it. And if you're adding him to win now, which is what you should be doing, then absolutely. His contract is next year's problem, I think you see, it's a little bit out of left field, and I get why we kind of started discussing it, because it was an old topic and it's a new topic, and there's sort of, I certainly have no reason to think the Canucks aren't interested in chasing after a defenseman. It makes lots of sense. The reporting is kind of obvious. You're like, of course they do. We can see the hole. We can see the cap space. Like we go A, B, C. So of course, a guy like Bowen Byram adds to the discussion. I just don't know how realistic it is for the reasons you just laid out, because in the big picture, that is a big issue to deal with. But if you're trying to win right now, that's absolutely the kind of player you should be chasing after.
That's right.
The cost be down.
That's right. And once again, if this keeps up for the Vancouver Canucks, we're about a month or so away from asking the question, just how all in are you? Right?
Yeah.
Like, especially given that this year you look like you're going to have some cap space. Have learned the Jake Gensel lesson about targeting a player but not being able to make him work financially.
Yep.
If they have the cap space this year, it'll be a truer test of all in, which I think they fell short of last year. I don't.
Yeah, they did. I mean,
they were all in.
There were moves they wanted to make. I mean, you mentioned Chris Tanev would have happened but for the lack of cap space. So, yeah, this is a group that does see where they're at. They know where they're at. Obviously, are anxious about number 40. Perhaps frustrated about number 40. We'll see how this plays out. I mean, he scored. He is playing better. There is no doubt about that. But the shot velocity is still down, and the skating speed is still down. And but the participation rate is pretty good, I would say. But
engagement,
you still need more.
He's been a lot better over the last couple of games, and look, he's doing great in cardio. He's one of the best in the league.
I would say this.
Cardio.
You do look, in terms of influence on the ice, and I looked at this last night, since I think the Chicago game, every game since then, he if you care about sort of shot quality, the natural stat tricks expected goals metric, which has lots of flaws because you don't know where the goalie was before the shot, you don't know where the pass was before the shot, and all these bits. But in terms of where the Canucks are shooting pucks from and taking and giving up shots from, when he's on the ice, the Canucks have been immensely to the positive. They have not been giving up very much defensively. He has been playing well defensively. He has been a positive defensive influence. Now, he is paid to score goals. He is making all that money because he is a former 100-point scorer. You may have heard that. And they need him to be that guy again.
I was going to say, in terms of the smiles per 60, they're getting better.
Yeah.
But did you guys see the Twitter post? The Canucks' own Twitter account kind of did him dirty yesterday. They were sharing the video of one-timers, Besser and Miller absolutely ripping one-timers in practice, and then two of the most half-hearted, lackadaisical ones from Elias. It's like they were trolling the people that are watching that thing. It means nothing, but why would they release that? Why would they put that out there and bring that criticism? Go look at the comments underneath that. It is terrible because it feeds into everybody's insecurities about him.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And because there's I will spare too much comment, but in the end, there's no editorial direction on what's happening.
Well, also talking about practice. Maybe
that's too. Fair enough, right? But
you were talking about practice, really?
Well,
After all you heard from Patrick Oveen?
No, but what I'm saying, you take a snippet from a practice and say, "Oh, look at how lackadaisical the guys' one-timers are at." We don't know they didn't do 20, full tilt,
100%. But then why do you release that?
I'll defer to Patrick and his most astute comment on that. Speaking of, thank you for yours today, and we will catch up next week.
See you at White Spot, guys.
Yes.
Happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day, Yellow Dog Squirrel Chaser Hazy Pale Ale.
There's some price from the Historic Wall Center. You can text us, 778-402-9680. Email live at sekeresandprice.com. All of it to the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
Whitecaps in the huge game Friday at LAFC. And if you missed it yesterday, they have changed the start time here. It is a 7:30 p.m. kickoff now from BMO Stadium in Los Angeles. Moved up from 8 p.m., thankfully. And everybody is accounted for at training, huh?
Yeah.
This is a healthy Whitecaps side. This is a Whitecaps side that has 9 goals through 3 MLS playoff games, including a 3-0 victory Sunday at LAFC. If you were going to go through the history of Whitecaps playoff soccer and circle a game and say, this is the one where they stand their best chance of an upset,
this is it.
This is it.
Everything has conspired for them after such a terrible end to the regular season. Everything has now conspired in their favor.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if they don't win, it's just because they weren't good enough. But they have now got, and LAFC drew a short straw here. This is a team that could have been in the top 4 with LAFC. All of a sudden, LAFC found themselves facing this team at full health for the first time in months and at full strength because of the acquisition of Stuart Armstrong. This was the worst case scenario for LAFC, and they have to be thinking that in the back of their head of, oh, crap. Why didn't we just get a crappy team? Instead, we had an underachieving team that fell.
Mm-hmm.
So, if they punch them in the face first, if they can get an early goal, easy to say in soccer, and it's more obvious in soccer, but, man, if they happen to get that early goal, could be fun.
As Robbo always used to say, goals change games, man. In this sport in particular, given how low scoring it is, if you can get the first one and put the fear of God into LAFC that, oh my gosh, we lost 3-0 and now we're behind on our home pitch.
It does make you think, too, about game 1, too. Think about that post from Brian White. If that goes in, Matt.
Well, not to mention a penalty that the Caps didn't gripe about too much, but there was a lot of chatter about whether it was a deserved penalty. Anyways, so looking forward to the match on Friday, and if the Caps were to get an early lead, that would be some kind of theater.
And dare to dream.
Mm-hmm.
facing Seattle in the next round.
They're Cascadia rivals.
If it happens. Not counting chickens. I'm just saying that would be a heck of a playoff setup.
Mm-hmm.
So let's remind people then. You can watch it on MLS Season Pass. You can listen to it. Go to whitecapsfc.com. And don't forget, you can watch it with friends too, because Goodco on Granville's their spot to watch the game. Watch party is going down on Friday. It's a free playoff watch party. Goodco on Granville. Sign up the Whitecaps this Saturday to get access to the watch party tickets. You go to whitecapsfc.com.
If I would have told you at the turn of the century, Blake, go back 25 years, we've gotten over the Y2K scare.
Whew. Just survived it.
That there would be a sports commissioner, for lack of a better term, speaking at a U.S. president's victory stage.
Mm-hmm.
Probably would have thought NFL, if at all.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, for sure.
But there was Dana White last night in West Palm Beach, Florida, at the Trump victory stage. And Trump calls on him to speak. And Dana White goes up there, Blake, and he not only speaks, but it sounds like his remarks were prepared. I know he's an off-the-cuff guy, Dana, but it sounds like he had thought about what he was going to say. And he seemingly is getting emotional when talking about how much the Trump family deserves this. I got to say, and look, when Blake and I started the show back in 2011, so a decade into the century, we're now a quarter of the way through it, I said sports business person of the 21st century so far is Dana White. He took a sport that was on the periphery, on the fringes, in backyards and barns. He took it mainstream, and he's turned it into a colossal success, particularly with the young male demographic. And Blake, when you look at the results of the U.S. election last night, what got Trump over the top? Men, particularly white men, and particularly young men. Bro culture. We saw it in the UFC. It is absolutely underpinning the success of that sport, and it is now underpinning the success of a two-time U.S. president who brings his sports commissioner buddy to the podium yesterday to talk. I have to say, of all the things, and the new normal phrase has been used a lot since the emergence of Trump in 2016, but of all the things that, if you had told me 10, 15 years ago were going to happen, Dana White, side by side with the president-elect, was not one I would have had on my bingo card.
Total revenue last year for UFC, $1.3 billion.
Yeah.
Record for them.
Yeah, and of course they sold it at an opportune time, right? Like, as we always say about UFC, it can be a great spectacle, but developing stars is so hard in that sport, particularly when one loss can take
they get beaten.
Physical toll.
Every three fights they get beaten.
They've had stars that have had drug problems, whether at recreational or performance enhancing, and yet seemingly Dana White has the magic dust to make it keep on keeping on.
Seems even extra hard on the women's side. They create these stars for a year on the women's side, and then
like Ronda,
and then the women never win another fight.
Yeah,
and it's over.
Well, that's it. And you see this going on in boxing now, too, where for whatever reason, if you're not undefeated anymore, you can't be a big star. Very few of them, who actually sustain a loss remain as big stars, whereas back in the day, Ali, Ray Leonard, all those guys lost, and we're still stars. And in the case of UFC, it is so difficult to maintain that undefeated mark,
and yet it perseveres.
And they have done a great job populating the sport with athlete after athlete that wants to get to the mountaintop, and they do an incredible job telling their stories, chronicling the journeys of some of these fighters, from their early stages when they're very much learning and up and coming into becoming headliners and top draws on their pay-per-views. And just wanted to share this with you because it's absolutely true from a Seahawks account at NC_LH_SEA. Trump won an election, lost an election, and won a second election, all before John Schneider built a good Seahawks offensive line. Like, John, you've had 2 terms now, man. You're on to your 3rd.
You would think it's easier than building an actual wall.
Yeah.
But Trump got many sections of an actual wall built. You couldn't build a proverbial wall for your quarterback.
You fixed left tackle with Charlie Cross, and that's it. You got 4 other spots to fix, John. Let's get to our poll question results from yesterday's Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. What has more of your attention, the Canucks-Ducks game or the U.S. election? What won the final vote here?
Election won.
Yeah. Percentage?
64.
56. 56. A lot of people in the comments saying, oh, come on, guys. Of course the Canucks-Ducks. It's going to take days to sort this thing out.
Didn't.
Narrator's voice. It did not take days.
By the way, for the first time in my life, I went dual monitor. Brought in the patio.
Did you?
I don't know that I'm going to move it out.
Oh, really?
It was delightful.
We have changed.
It was delightful.
It was November 5th, a seminal day for the United States and a seminal day for Blake Price's entertainment setup at home.
I don't know
Dual screen.
I don't know that the Chihuahua liked it because I had rolled the TV sort of into her bed, basically. But, it was very nice. Oh, what's over there? Oh, nice. Felt like we were at a sports bar.
Yeah, well, I see your Chihuahua, and I raise you a cat that yesterday cost us 3 to 4 hours of running around and $700+ to find out he had gas.
Needed to fart. Yeah.
God bless him. Errors and omissions.
I could give him lessons if you want.
What's wrong with the cat? Well, it appears he has gas, and he could really stand to pee.
Yeah.
He's apparently not peeing here at the vet. Got him home. You know what he did?
Big pee.
Oh, yeah. Like a full night drinking. Just sat in that litter box for minutes. And he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him going, do you know what you cost today?
Gas and peeing problem. You sure your
mother
cat is not a
was-
50-year-old man?
Yeah. No, it's true.
Yeah.
And he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him. He's a little groggy because he's on the pain medication. I'm saying, do you know what you cost today? Your mother was in hysterics, crying, sobbing, thinking the worst. We're racing back and forth to the vet. We're paying $700 bills. We're administering medication, which is never fun with the cat, huh? To find out you had gas. Errors and omissions. I have nothing on the list.
Wow.
Anything to self-report?
Nothing I remember.
All right. Moving right along. Thank you for listening, viewing, connecting with us. Appreciate you spending the time. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. YouTube, very big with the kids. Follow on social. That's YouTube, Insta, X, Facebook, and TikTok. Also big with the kids. And please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Of course, live, noon Pacific, weekdays. Keep it local. Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.